All right, everybody, welcome to the Warriors Report. I'm Les Faders, your host. As you can see on the screen, I'm not even going to bring them in. I'm just going to let them stay in here. We got Christian Simmons, 519 Sports, and he does every other team in the league too as well. Dylan Baker, radio voice of the Guelph Storm, and 519 Sports. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks, Les. This is my favorite, Les. I'm going to say this right off the top. This is my favorite episode of the year. You've had me on 2 years in a row to preview the playoffs, and I was so looking forward to this episode from the first time we spoke this year.
Yeah, it was. This episode gets me going, gets me excited. But before we get to the playoffs, let's talk about this past weekend in the Go, because there were so many games that meant so much. And then Stratford plays in that last game against Chatham, and there's a lot of chatter that might have been the game of the year. Sunday night in Chatham. Stratford put themselves in that own spot. Had a tough time Friday night against Waterloo. Waterloo's had Stratford's number 5. All 5 games this year. We won one, but they took us past 60 minutes. Waterloo just had Stratford's number, and Waterloo does not make the playoffs. Christian and I were talking about this before coming on air. I cannot recall a time Waterloo has not made the playoffs in Junior B hockey. And we're talking 90 years.
Yeah, I was trying to do some research. I couldn't do it fast enough. But yeah, you go back all the way back to 1940, their first Sutherland Cup championship. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Waterloo Siskins here, just going back through the old history books. But I couldn't find out if you're right about that. We're gonna have to try.
It's got to be somewhere. I can tell you for sure in the Midwestern Junior B and the Go up until this year, this is the first time they will have missed the playoffs. I would guarantee that.
Well, the thing is, too, right, everybody used to make the playoffs in the old Midwest, right?
Yes.
So that's the other thing. You could have a bad year and then still make the playoffs. We saw lots of teams that did that, right? So, yeah, it's been a while. And that's not to say Waterloo had bad years, because you look at some of those seasons in like the mid-late 2010s, and that team was just fantastic every single year. And even in the 2020s, they've had some really, really strong teams.
Yeah. You put Waterloo over in the Eastern Conference now, and they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Listowel makes the playoffs in the Eastern Conference as well. I'm not trying to pick on Christian, but
here we go. Another episode of West is the best, and Christian gets to sit in and listen.
Well, it's a little top. It's a little top heavy in the East.
Here we go. Here we go. Just to throw this out there, so I just jumped on a little bit of a research thing. So 14 Sutherland Cup appearances in 80 years for Waterloo. They've won 12 of them.
Yeah.
So a very successful stretch of playoff hockey for that organization. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. I know, like in the Midwest, when I was a kid, it was Stratford or Waterloo winning it. It didn't matter. It was back and forth every year. And then all of a sudden the Kitcheners got better and the Elmeyers got better and everybody else sort of caught up. So we had a lot of things happen on the weekend. Strathroy nailed down their spot. They beat London 2 games in a row, which helped Stratford. 2 big wins for Strathroy. St. Thomas squeaks in. That is a story and a half right there. And they're going to get Chatham in the first round. We're going to talk about that because I don't think it's going to be a 4 and done in that series, but we'll talk about that as we get closer. Going back to that Sunday night game in Chatham, the atmosphere in that building was pretty much back to the playoff series last year those 2 teams faced. Good sized crowd. The only thing in that game, both of those goaltenders, Noah Bender and DeBlasi, both stood on their head. Sammy DeBlasi made a save off, I think it was Cohen Galbraith maybe. He's going over to the right side of the net and all of a sudden throws his glove back behind him and stops the rebound shot. Don't know how he did it. About 30 seconds before that, Noah Bender made a toe save that it had to be the very tip of his blade that got that puck. If he wasn't such a tall goaltender, there's no way he would have got that puck because it was just amazing. And then a 10-round shootout. Overtime was end-to-end. 7 minutes of end-to-end and they were just going at it. And Sammy DeBlasi and Noah Bender stood on their head for that. And then we go 10 rounds into the shootout.
My goodness.
I'm not a huge fan of the shootout, but it got to the point where the Chatham fans are chanting "Cooch, Cooch, Cooch," and they put him out to shoot.
Wow. Did he score? I didn't follow the shootout.
He did not score. No, It was Kipfer scored, and then LaChance answered, and then Santiago Jimenez scored the winner.
Okay.
In the 10th round.
The 10th round.
Incredible. 10th round. So the funny thing was, we're coming down near Stratford scored about 1:35 left with the goalie out to tie the game. So both teams had their point. And then they went end to end for about 45 seconds. And then all of a sudden, Chatham got the puck and they're like, we're not doing this anymore. We need this point. They went and stood behind their net. And, you can't blame Stratford. We're not going to attack you and try and flush that puck out.
Yeah.
We're going to sit here. We're going to play for overtime as well, get the important point we need, and then flip a coin for whoever wins after that.
Well, you know what? It's one of the great benefits of the new setup that the league has, right? Where there have been meaningful games the last weekend of the season, both years that they've split into two conferences, right? Last year, it was Waterloo trying to play for that final playoff spot. Strathroy was right in there, and Strathroy lost to Listowel on the last day of the regular season last year, which allowed Waterloo to get into the playoffs. And this year, same story, right? Waterloo and St. Thomas this time battling for the final playoff spot into the last weekend. Elmira and Chatham battling for the number 1 seed into the last weekend. Stratford and London battling for home ice into the last weekend, right? These games all meant something, right? In past years, maybe you would have seen guys lay up a little bit and not put their best foot forward, but in both conferences and at different levels in the standings, different spots in the standings, teams were playing for something. And that's really awesome to see because it really makes the regular season more meaningful when that happens.
Yeah, we almost had the scenario, Christian, like you guys in the West, when you had the top 3 teams tied with the same amount of points in the East. We had that in the West going into the weekend. We had the top 3 teams tied in points.
Yeah, you guys were definitely treated this season to a really entertaining stretch of just 50 games of hockey for all 8 of those teams that are going to make the playoffs. They all played fantastic. A little bit of a different landscape in the East. I think 1, 2, and 3 have kind of been set for a while. St. Catherine's made a push there at the end, kind of bidding for, the number 1 seed, but definitely not the same situation that you guys had in the West. The bottom 3 was a little bit different though. That last couple weeks, it was a lot of kind of, jockeying for position, between Brantford Air and Caledonia, but you guys had a flip where you had the best teams in the West competing for meaningful spots, which made for, like Dylan said, a lot of really meaningful games. So
it was really interesting because we had the top 3 teams battling. We had 3 teams in the bottom battling, and then Stratford and London in the middle, just trying to decide who's going to get the extra game in the playoff first round. It really came down to that. Like, we were going into the last week and a half only knowing who was one series, the Stratford and London series. That's all we knew.
I mean, you look at it, you got, 8 and 7 separated by 2 points, 7 and 6, 2 points, a little bit of a gap between 6 and 5. And then from 5, 4, 3 to 2 is 2 points. 2 to 1 is another 2 points. Your 5 to 4 is 1 point. And when you look at the East, we got, a 4-point gap in that 1 seed, 6 points to that 2nd seed, and just kind of right down the list, 7 and 8, of course, that 1-point gap. But you guys just had a, such a tight finish just right across the board. And, I got to say, a little bit envious here in the Eastern Conference for sure.
And the Week 20 power rankings, final week of the year, Cambridge stayed on top.
There they are. You guys
deservedly where they belonged all year, I think, for 20 weeks. I don't even know if they did all 20 weeks at the top. I'd have to look back on that.
How does that make you guys feel that there's 2 of the top 3 in the power rankings come from the East, and the 4th is also in the East?
Yeah.
How do you think about, you think Elmira St. Mary's maybe a little bit higher on that list, or what do you think?
I'm not a biggest fan of the power ranking because if you separate the 2 divisions, then I think you get a better picture of what's going on. Right? Because it's more jumbled in the West than it was in the East.
I think I think too, like I think the power rankings are calculated by a formula, right?
Yes.
I think that's how they do them.
Yes.
And if that formula is purely stats based, well, the teams at the top of the Eastern Conference, which is a more top heavy conference, or was at least this season, are going to have better numbers inherently, right?
Yeah,
whereas in the West, where it's a little bit more spread out, those teams are going to have, I don't want to say worse numbers, they're still great numbers, but they'll be a little lower than the East, right? Like you see all the way down to the 6th seed in the West represented in the power rankings. In the East, yes, they have 3 of the top 4, but it's just the top 4 teams in the East, unless I'm missing Port Colborne in here, but I don't see them. So it's just the top 4 teams in the East that are represented in the rankings, right? So I think that, yes, Cambridge, St. Catharines, Fort Erie occupy 3 of the top 4 spots, and they've had great seasons, but they have some really incredible numbers based on the season that they've played, whereas the West kind of has that more depth in terms of the pool of teams there represented in the rankings.
Yeah, and the power rankings somewhere in that formula does take in strength of opponent as well. Even with a couple losses like Stratford this weekend, we dropped 3 spots, but we stayed in the top 10. Strathroy, they deserved moving up to where they are, coming out of nowhere.
Talk about a team finishing hot, eh? Strathroy, holy smokes, unbelievable.
They took care of us 2 games in a row. Well deserved. Seth Ronan,
good goaltender.
He's gonna win some games in the playoffs.
That's a fun guy to watch. I had a chance to see him for the first time this past Sunday.
In LaSalle, Christian. You made the trip to LaSalle. I want to hear all about it.
What an experience. First of all.
Did you do the water slide?
Didn't do the water slide, and I'm incredibly frustrated. Did have a fantastic afternoon though. It was unreal. First things first, I got to give a massive shout out to a young boy, 8-year-old Cullen Flood, in his battle with leukemia. Just to be a part of an event like that, it was incredibly special. I still have goosebumps to this day. I think I cried prior to puck drop. Like I was, I'm sitting there trying to get myself psyched up to call a game, and I was, shedding a tear. But I saw this guy play, Seth Ronan, first time. He came in, I think, 5 minutes into the game. Slow start to Mason Costa. LaSalle was able to score 3 really quick ones, and he just stood on his head the rest of that game. I think Strathroy just didn't have that extra gear that we've seen them have over the last 10. Of course, an 8-2 finish is fantastic. And one of those losses comes to LaSalle that afternoon. No Zach LeBlanc, but that kid is going places. He was fun to watch. And as for just the whole thing, LaSalle is a fun hockey town. That was a packed barn. It was fun to be there. And fun to, fill Dylan Baker's shoes for an afternoon. They were a little big. I didn't quite slide into them as easily as I had hoped, but it was a ton of fun. It was a ton.
Yeah, because you didn't do the water slide and he did.
I didn't do the water slide. I got to see.
Is that because you don't have the pole? He does.
No. Have I ever told you guys the story about the water slide?
No, yeah. No.
So I knew, I'd gone with the Kamoka Kings previously to LaSalle. I had seen the rink. I knew that there was a water slide in there. And I don't know if you guys remember seeing a viral video a couple of years back of a deer that got into a pool. That was in LaSalle at the Vollmer. A deer broke through the window and got into the pool at the Vollmer. So anyway, I knew there was a water slide there. So I actually sent an email to the city of LaSalle and said, hey, we want to do this. Is the water slide going to be open? B, are we permitted to film in there? And so they get back to me with an email. They send me a contact number. So I'm on the phone with the manager of the rink at the whole venue. And he's like, listen, we don't keep this thing on very often. We will turn it on for you, and we're going to turn it off after. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, we'll turn it on for you. We think this is a really fun idea. You guys can film just that water slide. Make sure you don't get anybody in the shot. We don't know who wants to be filmed, but you guys can film the water slide. And so they turned it on about 5 minutes before we were ready to go. I got the instructions, how to go down and everything, film that little shot. Thank God it was one take, because if it was more than one take, it wouldn't have looked real. I would have been wet going back up there, but it was a blast, and a big thank you to the city of LaSalle. I love that ring. I love that town.
That was one of the things I just remember thinking to myself, like, first of all, there's no way I'd be able to do it because I wouldn't be able to get through the first take, right? And I thought to myself, like, if he had to do a second take, like, I could totally imagine Darren and Brandon with blow dryers.
Yeah.
just drying them off for us to go back up again, or maybe Darren and Tim or whatever. But
one of the all-time great moments of that video is Tim's perfect towel throw. Darren gets in right in tight with the shot. It's a perfect shot. And then Tim with a perfect towel throw. I catch it. I dry myself off. And then let's get to the captain's comments or coach's comments last year. Let's get to the coach's comments.
It was perfect. Dylan got to swim down a water slide. I got to swim through the I don't know. The one thing with the one-sided stance, like you know what I'm talking about. You got to bench up against the wall, and then the one-sided stance. I was swimming through people.
Yes.
Just to get.
Because there's no walkway there.
No walkway. I remember it, we were at first intermission. We went back to our little room, did a little bit of editing, figure out a couple things, and we're coming back. And, of course I'm the new guy. Darren tells me to put on a timer, and I messed that up too. So we're 45 seconds late, like getting out of the room to get back up there. The guys are already on the ice. We're like 40 seconds away from puck drop. And Darren and I are like, like, you know what I mean? Like, just like kind of trying to get through people. So I was swimming through the stands of the Vollmer. Didn't get to go down the water slide.
Well, here's the thing, and this is my last point, and then I'll let you take over, Les, because I know we got stuff to get to here. But in Komoka, it's one-sided stands as well, right? But you have the walkway at the bottom, and you have the walkway at the top, and then you have stairs that allow you to get to wherever your seat is, so you can actually get through and get across. In LaSalle, there's no walkway at the bottom, and there's certainly no walkway at the top, so you have to go through the rows to get to wherever you want to go. So it's really difficult. I can just imagine the pain that you guys had in trying to.
It was painful. What a painful day. I had to scooch through people. It was brutal.
One more thing before we move on to what we're here for. Christian, you saw where the Zamboni came out of that in LaSalle, right? Where the Zamboni comes onto the ice.
Zamboni door.
Right under the scoreboard. I called a game.
Are we going to talk about where you called?
I called a game from right below there. So I would have rather done your shimmy through a crowd, which there was not when we were there.
Fair enough. You know what? To be fair, so the Strathroy boys set up in the corner.
Yes,
and
that's where I always set up too.
The corner, I couldn't believe it. It's definitely something there. So I can now, with experiencing it firsthand, I can appreciate what you went through. Yes.
All right. Well, this is what we're here for, the playoffs. Let's go to the Eastern Conference first. There you go.
The Eastern Conference, lots of fun stuff. I get to talk now.
You get to talk now. We'll go to the Cambridge Corvair series first. There you have it.
There it is.
Season record. Yeah. First meeting in the Go era. This is the first meeting between these two teams in the Go playoff era. There is a bit of a franchise meeting in a Sutherland Cup playoff playdowns back in the day, but for these two teams, this is the first time they're going to meet in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and I'm not picking Caledonia to win. Sorry.
Hey, you know what? It's okay. No need to apologize. And you know what? You are in the you're with most people. I think a lot of people look at this one. It's been a formality almost all season long that Cambridge is probably going to be in that number one seed. Caledonia, to be fair, though, I think in this second half of the season, or maybe this last quarter or so, since the trade deadline, they've really reshaped their identity. They're a totally different team. They have a new goaltender back there. They have a new coaching staff, 8 or 9 new pieces up front. So it's a little bit of a different team than I think a lot of people are expecting. I think, it's going to be maybe a closer series than most expect. I still see Cambridge as out and out the better team here. I think, top to bottom, they do have a lot of weapons that are, just hard to miss. You look at a guy like Reed Gamage or Cam Freeze, those guys are going to find a way to put the puck in the net. So definitely an interesting series. I'll get to see it firsthand. But I will say Caledonia and Cambridge did match up here final week of the season, and that was a close one. It was a 2-1 game. Cambridge not starting some of their bigger guys. Savory out, Freeze was out, Gamage was out. So definitely a little bit of a shorter hill to climb for a Caledonia team. But Cambridge didn't look overly dangerous. They had a 3-minute stretch at the end of that first period where they scored both of their goals, and Caledonia really carried the play for the remainder of that game. So I do think Caledonia is coming into this series with some confidence. Hopefully not a whole lot of misguided confidence, but definitely an interesting series. But I see Cambridge for sure coming in as kind of the team to beat.
Yeah. Dylan, do you think there's any truth to the fact that maybe Cambridge just coasting into the playoffs? Caledonia might be able to give them a little scare maybe at the start of the series?
You know what I think is interesting about this series, Les? I mean, Christian touched on it a little bit there. He mentioned the new coach, mentioned some new players. Mark Corbett's not the most gregarious guy back behind the bench, but he really has those guys playing well, right? And they're a veteran team. And I think that the veteran experience that Caledonia does have, they've got a lot of older, talented players. I think that really helps them. I think that gives them a real asset in this playoff series. And Cambridge, yes, they had a bit of an easier ride going in because of how well they started the season. Like they've been, a word to describe them would be incandescent almost, because they were heating up, and they've been shining all year long. But I think that Cambridge is a team that is just so loaded with talent, right? You look top to bottom in that lineup, they've got talent. On the back end, they've got talent. You look at Alex Forrest dance around out there for the Redhawks, and it's a sight to behold. He's such a fantastic player. So, I think that you can definitely make the argument that they got to coast a little bit because of how well they started the season, but it was not a guarantee that they would finish first, right? I mean, St. Catharines was really pushing them for a while, for the bulk of the year, I would say. Fort Erie had their crazy winning streak, and they were starting to push all of a sudden. So, yes, maybe they had an easier ride than Caledonia did getting into the playoffs, but they certainly had to battle throughout the year, and I think that this team is so loaded with talent.
Yeah, and you talk about a team like Caledonia, we like to say, they're playing with house money. They have nothing to lose going into this series.
Right.
So
yeah, I think, and that's the other thing. I think, to Dylan's point, talks a little bit about some of those veterans, some of those guys that have been around. Not only have they been around, but they won't be around for very much longer. You look at, Easton Swift and Ethan Quick and Ethan Osborne, some of those, big pieces offensively. This is their last kick at the can, here in this league. And I think if, specifically those two guys, Ethan Quick and Osborne, can show up offensively with the kind of talent that we know they have, with, Ethan Quick last year, the leading scorer in the East, and Osborne, of course, with his goal scoring ability. If those guys can show up and, string together, 5 or 6 games of their best hockey, I think Caledonia has a chance, just with some of that veteran presence and some of the skill that they have. So that's another thing I think will definitely play into this is, and Cambridge, to be fair, on the other side, they have a similar story, guys like Gamage and Freeze, they also want to, get that championship before it's too late. But, for Caledonia, I think, that's definitely a storyline coming in as well.
Yeah, I think there's been a Freeze playing Cambridge forever.
What's that?
Always seemed to be a Freeze on the Cambridge team. I don't know what it is, the big family or something there. All right, let's move on to the next series. I think before we leave this one, everybody online pretty much has Cambridge taking this one. So we might lean there with no upset in the first quarterfinal of that. Then we go to this one. Ayr, to me, has not been a team that's looked good at all this year, period. I think they're really in tough against St. Catharines.
Yeah, that's a matchup that's arguably scarier than the Cambridge one. St. Catharines has just played so well all year. They're coached incredibly well. Tyler Bielby has done a fantastic job with that group, top to bottom, similar to Cambridge. They great goaltending, great defensive core. They got the weapons up front. It's, where do you beat them? That's the question. Where do you beat them? Cambridge, again, similar, but Yeah, I don't know. It's a daunting challenge for any team. I don't think Ayr stacks up well against the type of, the type of value that St. Catharines has. I don't think it's a very good matchup. But yeah, another team that just has been really, really good all year. Under that 10 loss mark, and that's terrifying for whoever it is that you got to match up with that team. And of course, again, a really strong finish to the season. Cambridge, 10 straight victories to finish the year. St. Catharines, 3 straight wins and just 1 loss in their last 10. So we're talking about 2 teams that are playing some of their best hockey, and St. Catharines is fired up. There's players on that team that were around last year that they could taste it. It was right there. They were so close, to getting that Sutherland Cup and that banner in the rafters. And I think they're showing up this time around with something to prove. And I think, maybe have a little bit more in the tank, from just an attitude perspective, than a team like Cambridge. Like, they're pissed off and they're ready to win. And I don't think that bodes well for the Ayr Centennials here in the first round.
How do you see this one, Dylan?
You know what I think is interesting, and I think you touched on it there, Christian. The Ayr Centennials have gotten hot at the right time, right? They finished the season really strong, and this is a young team, right? Sometimes young guys go in there, and yes, St. Catharines is talented. Yes, they've got a 42-6-2 record, and they're really good top to bottom, just like the Cambridge Redhawks are. But sometimes the young guys look at that and they say, I don't care about that. What are they going to do, right? We can beat them. They beat them in their last matchup of the season, right? Ayr won that game. And I look at, 2 young guys in particular, and you can point to my bias here, 2 Storm prospects, but Carter Lewandowski had a strong year for the Centennials with 46 points in 45 games. Cruz Resnick, their goaltender, took the reins as the number 1 goaltender late in the season there after the deadline, and he's been heating up at the right time as well, right? He's been putting together some really solid numbers. I think he had a stretch where his save percentage was close to 950. So, I think that we talk about that idea of house money. Well, a lot of young teams play with house money, and the Ayr Centennials, I think, are going to be a very good team in very short order because they've kind of rebuilt the way they have this year, getting a lot of young talent in there. And I think, young talents that inexperience can sometimes help you a little bit. So, can Cruz Resnick steal a couple of games? I think he can. Right. And maybe they make it a series. So I think it's an interesting watch. But, St. Catharines, there's no denying how special that team is. And you mentioned it, Christian. I mean, they were so close last year with the Chatham Maroons. It was a back and forth series all throughout. And they want a chance at redemption, a chance at that Sutherland Cup this year.
All right. Let's get to the matchup number 3. This is the one. This series really intrigues me because we know what Brantford can do in the playoffs. They did it last year to Ayr, the 2-8 matchup. And Dylan, you'll remember I called that series. I took Stratford to win that series.
He was sure to let me know too that he called that series as well. He had to tell me.
There was not a lot of people that took that one, and I still think Fort Erie has the horses in the race, and they'll probably this might be a 6 or 7 game series, depending on which Brantford team comes out to play.
Yeah, I think this one is, probably the best chance in the East for an upset. I think Brantford has a lot of great tools. They have, some really dynamic young players. They got that David Buckman. They had a good deadline. They picked up some veteran presence. They picked up a Ty McCutcheon. They picked up a guy like Louis Inzers as well, who's, also been really, really good for them. And then, you look at some of their top scorers, Quentin Kim-LeMay has had himself a huge breakout season, for Brantford. And then, we know the story, Caleb Frank, with his release, his goal scoring ability. I think, this Brantford team is dangerous. They're very dangerous. And I think, Fort Erie has their work cut out for them. I think they got the most difficult matchup, and that makes sense, with, Brantford finishing 6th. I'm pretty good at math. But I do think that this Titans team is better than they're getting credit for. I think that they're going to show up. They're going to show out. Again, a pretty decent finish to the season, just under that 500 mark, in that last 10, but, a team that had when you look at it, their overtime losses and their shootout losses, that's a team that left 10 points on the table. They easily could have been right there with Port Colborne, maybe a couple of points underneath them in that 5th spot. And, if they had, some of the acquisitions earlier in the season that they picked up at that deadline, who knows, where this Brantford Titans team places in the Eastern Conference. So I think it's definitely, an intriguing matchup. I think Brantford has a chance to upset, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. But, on the other side of center, you got a Fort Erie team that's just rolling. Absolutely rolling. One of the strongest teams all year, 8-2 in their last 10. Another team that's just, on a roll. They're not too far removed from that massive winning streak they went on. I think it was, 20 games, 21 games. What was it? Can you guys help me out here? That winning streak that Fort Erie went on, it was something like that. They went on like
I think it was 20 games. Yeah.
Was it 20 games?
Yeah. They got points in 20 games.
They're not too far away from that. I don't know what the numbers are, since going on that winning streak, how many games they've lost since then. I would say it's a pretty low number. We're talking about a team that in their last 30 games have pretty much been unbeatable. And, with the emergence of Raphael Tremblay, kind of, slotting into that starting netminder role. And then, of course, with Sam Tonelli up front and all the other weapons that they have, Evan Nicholson, being a young presence, and Dylan Greenwald getting hot at the right time. Such a dangerous team again. Like, it's tough to, take the underdog in this one, but I do think that this is going to be the closest of the best versus worst series in the East.
Yeah. Dylan, when Fort Erie lost their goaltender Finn Moffat, everybody thought that's it. Where's this team going to go from there, right? But they've been able to stick it out and really go on a heater.
Yeah, no, they have. It's been really impressive, and I think they're so well coached. They're so well run in Fort Erie, right? Nick Pissarro, his brother Anthony, there as well. They do such a great job with that team and that organization. They're competitive year in and year out. They are always fielding really good teams. Christian, I did look up that stat. It was 19, the winning streak for Fort Erie that they had earlier this year, and it ended in January. But, I really am high on this Fort Erie squad. I think they're so good. And we talk about Raphael Tremblay. Finn Moffat goes to Quebec, and they get Raphael Tremblay from Quebec. So they send a goaltender there. They get one back as well. And Tremblay's been such a great pickup for them between the pipes. There was concern for sure when you lose a guy like Finn Moffat, a guy who's been as good as Finn Moffat has been in this league. You think, well, who's going to fill that void? And Raphael Tremblay's done so successfully. And I think that they had the lowest goals against average of any team in the GOHL this year. I believe I saw that come out this year or today. Yes. Sorry. Really impressive team. I don't know if we can cut that out. Sorry, I had to sneeze.
Oh, no. We're leaving that one in.
Baker is not a robot. You heard it here first.
I was trying so hard to hold it in.
That's the first time.
Oh my God! I just couldn't do it anymore.
I have ever seen anything human from Dylan Baker.
I was just going to say the same thing. He's always stoic and always on. Sorry, Dylan. That one's staying in.
Okay. So anyway, now that everybody's heard my sneeze, I'll move to the Brantford Titans. David Buckman is, I think, such a dynamic defenseman. 29 points in 28 games this year. He kind of came over a little bit later into the season, not sneezing. Sorry, I'm still thinking about that sneeze. He comes over a little bit later into the season, over a point per game from the blue line. He is such a great skater. And I think the thing we hear about David Buckman a lot is he's kind of like another coach out on the ice. He sees the game so well. He's directing traffic on the power play. He's a great power play quarterback. This is a first-round OHL pick, mind you, right? Like he was Brantford's first rounder in the Ontario Hockey League draft last year. So really impressive player, really great weapon for the Brantford Titans. And I think, Christian, you hit on all the right points. Quentin Kim LeMay, Caleb Frank, these guys are having good years. Another guy I look at is Mateo Gauthier. Mateo Gauthier missed about 2 months, maybe a month and a half, and didn't play from, I think, early January to the end of February there. And he is back, and he is playing again, and he's got 29 points in 32 games this year. A really talented player as well that I think is a huge get back in the lineup up front.
All right. One last series in the East, and I'm going to say it here. This probably is going to be 7 games, and whoever has either the most number of players not suspended or hurt will win this series. And if you look at the way they're playing this series, they're playing this series like a true 7-game playoff series: 2 at home, 2 away, and then swapping back and forth for the last 3 games. We usually don't see that, and this is the only series so far that's seeing that. We haven't seen what the LaSalle series is yet. I'm not even gonna. I don't even want to pick a winner in this. I just think it's going 7 games. You flip a coin, and like I said, who's ever healthy and still in the game is going to win this series.
Yeah, well said, Les. It's tough. This is you're kind of walking a tightrope. You could fall either way. It's such an intriguing series for so many reasons. These two teams, when they play against each other, they have symmetry. You have a Pelham team that is fantastic defensively, has great penalty killing. And then a Port Colborne team that has a fantastic power play, has some really dynamic guys up front. It makes for, what could be a really intriguing series. And I think, when you mentioned that, they designed it like a, kind of a 7 game, 2 here, 2 there, 1-1-1. That's, whoever made that decision deserves a raise, because I do think that this team will probably see the majority of those 7 games. And I think it comes down to goaltending. I think Port Colborne, suffering that loss with JD Lowe, having, a surgery, Stephen Amaro back, alongside Trent Hutchison. I think for Port Colborne, it's going to come down to goaltending. I think if they can stop that Pelham Panthers team, who this year did score a significantly bigger number of goals than they did. They did prove to be a little bit more offensively dangerous. I think you got to find a way to shut them down. And, for Pelham, another team that's just kind of rolling into the playoffs, 7-3 in their last 10. They've shown, kind of that willingness to compete down the stretch in some of those big games. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they beat Fort Erie in the last couple of weeks, or did they get crushed by Fort Erie? I think it was the other way around.
One of each.
They beat Fort Erie, then they got crushed. So it was, kind of a bit of a split vote there. But they played some big games against some big teams, and they found a way to win. And I think with, Zach Ronaldo behind the bench, and just, the way they've been playing all year, just with, kind of that attitude, kind of that swagger, I think they have a great shot, of beating this Port Colborne team. And for the Sailors, they got to get back to their brand of hockey. For the last, 10 games, they've really struggled. I think, they've had some injury problems. They've, again, with the goaltending, they've had some kind of in and out of their lineup. And, it's a little bit of, we need to kind of get back to our identity. But again, just such a good team with, some of the guys they have up front. PJ Alexander is just, that guy he was manufactured in the lab for playoff hockey. The way he plays, the attitude, the chirping, the physicality, he doesn't shy away from any of it. So I think he's a big asset for Port Colborne. Stephen Amaro coming back, another big asset, in between the pipes. I think if he plays well, they have a chance. And, like you said, Les, this is going to be probably the best series in the East.
Well, it's the lowest travel budget series as well.
That's it. That's it. And we're going to have packed barns. That's for sure. Hometown fans, it's, a very short trip down Highway 58, and you're in one of those 2 buildings. Yeah.
It's almost as short as a Stratford St. Mary's trip, but Dylan, what do you see in this series?
Well, Christian, you just taught me that there was a Highway 58. I was unaware of that. So thank you for that information. You know what? I'm with you guys. I think this series is going to be really tight. Christian, you mentioned the defensive stinginess of the Pelham Panthers and how good they are in their system. They're not a feckless team, right? They are very responsible. They don't try to overdo it and make too many plays, right? They stay within their structure. They play it really well. And you mentioned the Port Colborne style of game. It's kind of an esoteric system where, it's meant to be. That's the way the Port Colborne Sailors play hockey. And Kevin Roseborough, I think, is such a great coach, and I think that he can have them rolling. And I think goaltending is a fascinating conversation. I think it's a great point you bring up, Christian, because you look at the way that the Pelham Panthers have had goaltending all season long. Logan Snyder, Liam Edgecombe, 2 fantastic goaltenders. Any given night, right? Snyder will be the starter. He's the veteran guy, I would assume. He's had great numbers this year. But then you look at Liam Edgecombe, and he's also had fantastic numbers this season, right? So either guy could take the reins in between the pipes for Pelham. If one guy's not going, the other can step in. I think it's comparable to the situation St. Mary's had last year with Nico Armelin and Colby Buthausko, where it didn't really matter who was in net. They had a chance to win because they were both such good goaltenders. So, I'm really high on the Pelham Panthers. I really think Port Colborne's a good team as well. What's interesting to me, and it's on the screen right now, I see the season series, 3-1 Pelham. In a matchup like this, you wonder maybe would it be tighter? Would it be 2-2 and 3-1? Let's be honest. It's a 4-game sample size. Let's not draw too many conclusions. But Pelham has won 3 of those 4 games, right? And that's a credit to them. So I wonder if that may reflect itself in this series. But I honestly, I think this could go either way as well. I think it's going to be a great series.
All right, so that's going to get us through the East, Christian.
All right, I'm going to go to the bathroom, guys. Should I? You want to text me when you're done?
I think we might see a couple. We might see a couple of sweeps in the East, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Turn our attention to the West. You know what's coming. At the Wild Wild West, and it lived up to its name again this year.
Boy, did it ever!
We have 4 series, and I do not think you see a series go less than 5-6 games. All 4 of them.
Oh yeah.
Even that Chatham St. Thomas series, we'll talk about that one first. Chatham was only 2-2 against St. Thomas this year. St. Thomas has walked into Chatham, beat them in Chatham, and then beat them on home ice as well. I talked to some of the fans in Chatham, and they said they're not looking forward to playing St. Thomas because with Camputero back in net for St. Thomas there, he can win you a game or 2, Dylan.
Yeah, he absolutely can. I mean, he's been such a great ad for them this season. He comes over and immediately he makes an impact. And I think he's such a talented goaltender. Soo Greyhound's prospect, I believe.
Yeah,
having a great season, having a really great season. And we talked about youth with Brantford and Ayr as well, and how young they are. Well, you want a young team. St. Thomas had the most rookies in the GOHL this season, right?
Yeah, they started with 19.
Yes. Yeah, they're such a young squad. And you look at the talent on that roster, too. I'm just pulling it up now just so I make sure I get the numbers right. But I look at a guy like Miles Dunn, who had 57 points in 47 games this year. Fantastic for the St. Thomas Stars. Wyatt Cameron right there with them. Alohan Legalic, the London Knights third-rounder, also had a great season. So, yes, they are young, but they've got so much skill in this series. And you want to talk about so much skill, the Chatham Maroons, another team with just a whole lot of skill, a whole lot of experience behind the bench. Brennan Feasey was an assistant coach for that team that won the Sutherland Cup last year, so he knows what it takes to get to that point. A lot of the guys returning. I look at Dylan Richter, their captain, Ian Lachance, Carter Chadwick, a couple of guys as well up front who have that experience. Trevor Zanuto might be the MVP of the league this season, the way he's been playing for the Chatham Maroons. He's been so good. So a really strong Chatham team. And the thing that worries me with St. Thomas, now they're a great team and they have a lot of great talent. They did struggle late in the season.
Yeah.
Right? So can they get off that schneid as the playoffs begin? That's what I'm watching for, because at the beginning of the year, they were in the mix in that top 5, right? Yeah. They were battling for positioning in the top 5 of the Western Conference. And so I wonder if they can find that form again. I think they've got a great coach. I think they've got a great team. And I think it'll be really interesting to see in the first round. And that's not to take anything away from Chatham, because, I got to see them firsthand a lot last year. They played 2 Game 7s, and obviously we were there for the Sutherland Cup final. That's such a talented team. That's such a tight team as well. They all love being Chatham Maroons. They love that community. They love what the M represents. And so, I think that team unity that they have, that chemistry is a real asset for them.
Christian, Dylan talked about St. Thomas slowing down there at the end of the year. Could that just be a product of all these young kids playing a 50-game grind in this league?
I think so. And that's kind of the way that I look at this series. You have a battle-tested Chatham Maroons team with a lot of guys that have been there before, a lot of veterans. You got some 05s on that team, some 06s, some guys that, really, kind of cemented themselves as junior hockey players. A lot of these guys, St. Thomas, you look at their roster, in particular, some of their top scorers, 08, 08, 08, 09, 09, 08, 08. These are young hockey players that come from, U16 or even U18 in seasons where they played 33, 34, 35 games if they're lucky. Some teams played maybe even a little bit less. So, I do think that's going to be a factor. How are these guys taking care of their bodies? They're young athletes. Of course, they're all in great shape, but after a 50-game regular season, it'd be naive to think that all these guys are 100% and completely healthy. And, I do think that Chatham has, a little bit of an edge, in a sense that these guys have been there before. They know what it takes. They understand the grind and the difficulty that a 7-game, junior playoff series presents. And I think that's definitely going to, play in Chatham's favor. But, another thing, to mention for the Maroons is just how much depth scoring they have. I think that's one thing that St. Thomas doesn't have. The Stars have a lot of, to Dylan's point, really, really talented young players. You look at, Miles Dunn and Elwan Legalic and George Matsis and Tyson Lawson. These are guys that are, very talented. And then, in the bottom 6, still guys down there that can score. But you look at Chatham's, top 10 scorers, we're looking at all 10 are above the 30-point mark. St. Thomas, a little bit of a drop off. Their 10th best scorer is down at the 20-point mark. So I see Chatham as a team a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, a little bit more offense. St. Thomas, young, excited, just happy to be there. But do they know what it takes to play a 7-game series in the playoffs? And are they physically and mentally ready to do that?
Yeah, because Chatham's a big, tough team. We saw that. I think a big key to Chatham is if Dylan Richter gets back into the game, back on the ice into this series, he could really
dangerous.
turn that whole series around by himself. He is one talented hockey player in Dylan Richter.
Yes.
That's
all right.
Western Conference Playoff MVP last year. Is that what I remember?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's go on to the second series. No schedule release for this one yet. They're trying to still figure this one out. I would say if you want to take an upset here, I would put my horses in LaSalle. They have played fabulous hockey since just before the trade deadline, I think, and they haven't slowed down one bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, the LaSalle Vipers have been red hot, like you mentioned, since the deadline there, Les. I think the Windsor Spitfires sent a couple of players down to LaSalle, and ever since, they've just been rolling. They've just been absolutely rolling and playing some fantastic hockey. And I think that could definitely carry over into the playoffs. I mean, they've got a solid record. They've had a great season, and I am impressed by the brand of hockey the LaSalle Vipers are playing right now. I think last year they started the year really hot and started to tail off as the season went along. And this year you kind of saw a bit of the same thing. They were tailing off a little bit, and then the trade deadline hits, and they have been reinvigorated. They've had a ton of energy, a ton of goals, and a lot of success. And I think that's a credit to that team for turning things around the way that they have, and they're playing a really good brand of hockey right now. You see the season series there. I'm looking at it online right now, and a lot of those matchups were early in the year. They only played one game post deadline. Elmira won that one 6-3. But I think that the Elmira Sugar Kings are such a loaded team, loaded team. Kyle Morey sets the franchise record in points with 86 in 50 games, 86 points in 50 games. Like it's unheard of. It's a really great season that Morey had, and Brendan Gerber as well, having a phenomenal year, 62 points in 50 games, 32 of those goals. I think Elmira has probably the most dangerous power play in the playoffs. Cambridge is right up there. Chatham's right up there. But I think they've got such a talented offensive group that it's going to be real tough to stop the Elmira Sugar Kings. The goaltending they've got as well has been solid this year. A young piece that they have on the blue line, Lucas Nutting, set the Elmira franchise record for goals in a season by a defenseman. 14, really talented player. And how about Guelph Storm prospect Benjamin Brunton? 51 points, 50 games. Good season for Ben Brunton as well.
Yeah. Great season for Ben Brunton. One thing that I did want to mention, and it's hot off the press of my experience in LaSalle. Again, like Dylan said, some of those guys coming back from Windsor, very talented players, Sean Costello, Max Brocklehurst. They were a treat to watch. That team is also big. That's a big blue line.
Huge.
In LaSalle. Huge blue line. Huge. And I do think that is a factor, just to kind of throw out there that, an Elmira team that is maybe a little bit smaller. You look at, some of their top guys, Kyle Morey, Brendan Gerber in particular, both significantly under 6 feet. You look at that LaSalle blue line, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", just seems to be, those are pretty common numbers right across that blue line. I think LaSalle has, an asset in their size, and, we'll see if they use it.
Yeah, and that's true. But I think with Maury though, he's not a big kid, but you got to catch him.
You
He's
got to catch
really
him.
shifty. He's really shifty out there with the puck, and he does magic with that puck on his stick. And there's so like Dylan said, nutting on the back end can just control that whole team from back there, and especially on their power play. He doesn't sit on the bench a lot during the games, but I think LaSalle could be primed to maybe upset Elmira. Elmira came out of the gates. We talked about this early in the year, Dylan, when we did the preview, that Elmira was gutted, and then they came out just on fire in the first half of the season.
Yeah, they were rolling, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they sort of lost a bit. Like they're not the same Elmira team we saw at the beginning of the year to what the Stratford played them at the last game we played them. They just didn't look like the same team, but it's the playoffs, so anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the St. Mary's series here now. This is another series that I think might be a lot closer than people think. It should be 4-0 in the season series, but it's a typo. Person that put this together should get fired.
Les, did you put that together?
I did. I think St. Mary's with their goaltending, because they got the 3 goaltenders back there that you could pretty much insert any one of them into their lineup.
Yeah, you know what? That's a big asset for St. Mary's. You're right, Les. And I think that Strathroy has played some really good hockey since the deadline, and they do have a win against St. Mary's. So the 3 is right. You're right on the 3 loss. It's the 1 that is the change there. But if you look at the 2 matchups that they've played since the trade deadline, which is the unofficial halfway point of the season, just a little bit past it for real. 4-3 St. Mary's final score on January 17th in Strathroy. Strathroy goes into the PRC and wins on February 20th, 5-3. So the Rockets are playing good hockey right now. They are not afraid to mix it up. That team is not afraid to get physical. They're not afraid to get chippy. They're not afraid to chirp. They're a good team. They're a strong team. They've got a ton of offensive talent. I look at Jake Ritson. I look at Zach LeBlanc. I look at the addition of Quinn Gavin White. He's been a big pickup for them. And we've already touched on Seth Rowan and what he's able to do between the pipes. So Strathroy, not a team to be slept on. I'm big on the St. Mary's Lincolns as well. I think that they're a very strong team this year. They had that lengthy winning streak as well, right up there with 40 in terms of the winning streak. I think St. Mary's got to 16 before it was snapped in Stratford, I want to say, less. But they're such a strong team. And you mentioned the goaltending. I mean, a lot of times, the playoffs boil down to goaltending. I look at Chatham last year. Gannon Hunter was really good between the pipes for them in the playoffs. And it was kind of a battle between him and Sammy DeBlasi in the regular season, who was going to start in the playoffs. And Hunter took the reins in that second round series against Stratford last year. And never looked back. And so if there's a guy for St. Mary's who can do that, they may be a real dangerous team in the playoffs as well. And just to that same end for Strathroy, why can't Seth Ronan steal him a few games, right? Why can't Seth Ronan be that guy? So really intriguing series between St. Mary's and Strathroy.
Yeah, I think they'll be all low scoring games.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see a blowout in this series, but it's just something about that Strathroy team in the last month they've had that they've been playing playoff hockey since November, pretty much.
Yeah, I just want to say one quick thing here too, Les. Yeah. This matchup feels inevitable in the playoffs every day. You look at the previous meetings there, like they play each other every single time that they are in the playoffs together. It feels like the only time was 2022 where they didn't. There were no playoffs in 2021. Since 2020, they've played each other every year but 2. 2021, there were 2022, they didn't play each other. And then last year, Strathroy didn't make the playoffs, right? Yeah. But when they're in the playoffs, they find a way to play each other. 2024, they don't play each other in the first round. Strathroy beats St. Thomas in round 1, and they play each other in round 2. So, in my seven seasons that I've been around the GOHL now, they've played each other. This is the 4th time in 7 years that they have faced off with each other. So for me, when I think of playoff hockey, I think of St. Mary's and Strathroy.
Yeah, and it looks like maybe Strathroy, it's, they're a team that's probably saying, why not us? Why not us, right? All right, on to the 4th matchup, and probably the matchup that I'll see all of. It's an intriguing matchup because
take the reins, Les.
Well, this I'm going to start with London. This London team is not the same London team we saw at Christmas time. There's been a lot of change in London, and Stratford got Cruz Ferguson out of London for Matthew Blake and Jack McGurn. Matthew Blake's now the captain in London. Mm-hmm. I honestly, I don't think this game goes any less than 6 games. This series, any less than it's all going to be, can Stratford put the puck in the net? Um, you know, 8th in scoring goals this year in the conference. You know, London's got that high-powered top line out there with Pomerleau, and it'll come down to goaltending as well. If Noah Bender is Noah Bender like he was Sunday night, I think it's going to be a good series. If Stratford also, you get Colin Slattery back hopefully, and Jonas Schmidt, that'll add some offense to the lineup. But I like the matchup of these two teams, and I think it's going to be a hard-fought series, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Les. I think it's going to be a real battle. London this season with 6 point per game players on the roster now, 3 of them not on the roster anymore, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of turnover on this team right around deadline time, and so it's a different looking London team. They've got a lot of new players. They've got a new coach in Kelly Corpse, who's also the GM there now taking the interim coaching reins here for the remainder of the season after they and Brandon Prust parted ways, but. It's a fascinating matchup, and you mentioned Stratford and their scoring, and they picked up some scoring at the deadline. Cruz Ferguson was obviously having a great year in London before he gets dealt to Stratford, and has continued a solid run of play with the Warriors. Nobody doubts that Stratford can play defense. Stratford can clog up the neutral zone. They can limit your chances. I think there was that game against Strathroy. What did Strathroy have? 11 shots through regulation? Yeah. It was ridiculous. And Stratford can do that. Now, can they do that against a high-flying London team where you mentioned it? There's Pomerleau, there's Campo, Nate Adams they picked up from Kamoka midseason. He finishes the year at a point per game. And one of the things I really like about London is they can create offense from the blue line as well. Cooper McAslin and Cody Wood are 2 really strong defensemen. Young guys, one's an 09, one's an 08. Cody Wood ranked by NHL Central Scouting. I think the only active GOHL player that is ranked by NHL Central Scouting. He's such a talented guy on the blue line. And goaltending is also a big question. I mean, can Noah Bender be at his best? Absolutely. And when Noah Bender's at his best, I mean, he's hard to beat. And for the Nationals, is it going to be Dante Bertolin? Who is going to take the net there? Is it Bertolin? Is it going to be Penner? Obviously the numbers would point to Bertolin, but that goaltending matchup. I mean, Noah Bender's a guy with OHL experience, a guy who has experience in the playoffs in the GOHL as well. So it's going to be a tight series. I think it's going to be back and forth, and I see real merit to both of these teams winning the series.
Yeah, and Noah Bender has the winning pedigree, the Schmaltz Cup there with Wellesley before he went off to the O. Christian. Yep. What do you think about this series, sir?
I think Stratford has to score more than 2 goals a game. I think you look at Stratford's last 5. You are looking at a 0-3 1-1 record, and in your last 5, Stratford has failed to score more than 2 goals a game. And when you match up against, again, like Dylan said very eloquently, that London Nationals team, they're 3rd in the West in goals scored. That's a very, very powerful team that, regardless of the kind of goaltending you get, they're going to find a way to score. And we both, all 3 of us, know that the way hockey works is you have to score more than the other team. So I would say there's a good chance that London scores more than 2 goals a game here in this playoff round. And for Stratford to be successful, they're going to have to do the same.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's, scoring's been a question mark in Stratford all year. Max Wildfong off the schneid there Sunday night. He scores 2 in Chatham. He threw that monkey. I think he threw the monkey through the roof in Chatham when he scored that first goal, because he was pretty animated about that one when we were calling the game. He was fired up. Guys, this first round is going to be fabulous hockey in both conferences. I'm not going to say one conference is going to be better than the other. I just think there's no first round series that I'd really not take my eye off this year going into the Go playoffs.
Yeah. No, the West is going to be wild. The East is going to be beastly. Yeah, I don't know. We need to find a
moniker for the East.
Something better, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. Cambridge, Caledonia, I'll have a front row seat for that one, and then in Port Colborne as well. I've been doing some work there with Spencer Tangway, so I'll get to see Cambridge. Potentially lighting it up like they have been, and then that Port Colborne Pelham series, man, that's all eyes there in the East for sure.
Yeah.
Dylan, how do you see things unfolding?
Well, you know what? I think there's going to be a lot of close series. I think that there are some real interesting matchups this year in the first round of the playoffs, and I think in past years you could always count on at least one sweep in there. I think we got a couple last year in the first round. I really, struggle to make the case for sweeps this year. I think that there are going to be some really tight battles. You look at even the 1-8 matchups. We talked about the experience that Caledonia has, the house money that they're playing with, and house money. Same principle applies for St. Thomas, right? And St. Thomas, who has played Chatham very well this season, 2-2 record against the first place Maroons. So, I think that the series which you would normally look at and say, well, that's probably just going to be 4 and the top team will win, and that'll be that. I don't think you can say that about this year's playoffs. I think that the West is wild. You can say it twice if you want, like you always do, Les. I think it is the wild, wild West. But I also think that the East has some really interesting matchups, and I think Pelham Port Colborne could be a really great series. That one in particular, I look at and I say that one might be really back and forth, and I'm excited to watch all the matchups. We got to wait till Friday to see it. Normally the playoffs start on Wednesday, right? They're trying something different this year, starting on the Friday. But I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited to keep an eye.
Well, it was funny. Somebody had said to me, he said, well, if London gets home ice, you're going to be in London on the Wednesday night. I said, I doubt it because I have a league meeting on the Wednesday night. So I doubt they're making us go.
Yeah.
But
no.
I think once we get past this first round, that second round.
The second round might be even better than the first. The first is going to be great. The second round is going to be just a battle.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah. I can't wait either. What's going on with this scheduling? We should have games tomorrow. What's going on? I got to wait till Sunday. I'm going to be pulling my hair out.
The teams that play on Saturday, Christian, and how long they'd have to wait for their first home game. If we started tomorrow, right, and all of a sudden you got what are the teams that play? So Strathroy plays at home on Saturdays. I know that. London plays the odd Saturday home game. These teams that have to wait a long time to get to their Cambridge, the 1 seed, right? If they want to start that series and it's supposed to start Wednesday, they got to wait 3-4 days before they can actually get going. So I think the Friday start helps teams a little bit more because it allows the series to start on time kind of thing. But I'm with you. I just want the playoffs to be here already.
Let's just get there.
Yeah, I just wanted to be,
Come on.
I don't know what I'm going to look at on my phone for the next couple nights because I'm not,
Well, you can watch my Habs beat your Leafs tonight, Les. That's cool.
That's probably a given. I did sign my Buffalo Sabres fan card the other day to cheer for them in the playoffs. So
wow, Christian's a huge Sabres guy.
I will say it as well.
Mine says mine expires though.
Did you guys get to catch that Tampa Bay Buffalo game?
I saw the highlights.
Sunday night. It was Sunday night.
Yeah, so I saw the highlights.
I watched that game and then purchased tickets for the next matchup between those two teams. April 6th, I'm going to Buffalo to watch that matchup. Wow. But yeah,
that could be a battle for first place in the Atlantic at that point. Like that late in the season.
Well, it was a battle for first place in the Atlantic the other night.
Yeah.
Buffalo's in first place in the Atlantic. Who would have thought that?
Who would have thought, man? I'm officially resigning.
Yep.
What's that?
Good for your Sabres, Christian. Good for your Sabres.
They're not my Sabres. I was just saying I'm resigning as a Leafs fan for the rest of the year.
I put my membership on hold. It went on hold, and
that's it. It's on hold. Yeah. I can't.
My Sabres membership expires when they get put out.
So. That's it. My membership card needs to be renewed, and I am not taking it out of my wallet until next year. I'm officially going to cheer for Buffalo for the rest of the year. So,
all right, heard it here first.
Because when I had the chance to sign up for a team, the first one that came up was Montreal. Hell no, not going to happen. I can't do that. That's against the rules.
I don't know, an exciting young team out in Montreal, Les.
I'm not gonna say you're wrong. They are a good team, but I
always room for one more on the bandwagon. I'm just saying.
If I have to join a team, if I have to ride a horse in the West, though, I'm gonna take Colorado and say,
easily.
Yeah. Well, don't sleep on the Bleu Blanc Rouge, Les. Canadians might go all the way this year.
But I hope Toronto comes out tonight and just puts a beating on them and say, hey, we can do it too when we're terrible.
Well, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll know, won't we? Is it
we will.
Coming out on Wednesday? Yeah.
I might get it. I'm probably going to get this one off the books tonight. Maybe.
Oh wow!
Get it out there right away. There's a lot of interesting people wondering Not what I think. What you two guys think.
You know what Dylan Baker thinks.
No, I don't know if anybody's wondering that. I don't know if anybody's wondering what I think.
Speaking of what Dylan Baker thinks, the Guelph Storm, how are they matching up this year?
Well, you know what? It's going to be interesting. It's a real battle for 6th place in the Western Conference right now. The Storm are right in there. Owen Sound's 2 points back. Saginaw, I believe, is 4 or 5 points back right now, and it's tight. I mean, it's going to be really interesting, and it's tight. It's kind of like the GOHL, where it's tight at the bottom, it's tight at the top, right, of that playoff picture, where 6, 7, and 8 are separated by 4 or 5 points, and then at the top, it's the same idea. I think Kitchener's maybe running away with the 1 seed right now in the West, and then you got Windsor and Flint. It's anybody's guess who finishes second, who finishes third. And the Storm will, if they hold on to 6, they'll get the 3 seed. If they fall to 7th, they'll get the 2 seed. And it's going to be a tough matchup no matter how you slice it. But Storm are young and hungry, and they want to make noise in the playoffs. That's the big thing. They're hosting the Memorial Cup next year. They want to get that playoff experience, and so they're hoping to make something happen this year in the postseason.
How many weeks in the regular season left?
A couple weeks now. Because
you guys got like another month or something?
Playoffs, I think, start in 2 weeks.
We start this week. I think the OGHL is the week after, and then I think you guys are 2 weeks after that. So, it's a great time of year if you want to watch junior hockey in Ontario. And even some senior hockey. That matchup.
Shout out to all of our 519 senior teams. Yeah.
I was going to try and get Brandon Bax on tonight, but he had to go to a game in New Hamburg. So,
Brandon.
Yeah,
just picking up hockey games anyway.
He was doing a championship game in New Hamburg.
That guy
assigning them to unnamed people as well.
I think Christian will get you out of here in time so you can go up to the Hammer tonight, eh?
Yeah, big U16 game tonight.
Play-in game, I see, Christian.
Yeah, it's going to be a little play-in game. It's effectively like there's a Peterborough OHF weekend, and tonight we'll decide if the Hamilton Steel will be present. So big game tonight, 8:30 at the Shadoke Twin Pad. I'm excited.
All right.
Well, gentlemen, this has been fun again.
Yes, always.
I love these playoff preview, and we'll see if we can hook up later in the playoffs, but with your guys' schedule, I doubt it. And
maybe a finals preview, Les. You never know.
Yeah, let's do that. Why don't we?
You never know. We could do that.
Preview?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, nice. I'd like to see some teams make a run. I think it's going to be a great playoff series. I think you're going to see some interesting things happen, and I'm looking forward to it.
St. Thomas Sutherland Cup final.
Anything can happen. GOHL playoffs, junior hockey. Anything can happen in junior hockey.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Just look at Waterloo didn't make the playoffs. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. The Toronto Maple Leafs are not making the playoffs this year. Anything can happen.
Well, that was a given,
boys. No,
that was a given back in October.
Come on.
All right. We're going to end it there, guys. Great preview show there, gentlemen. Dylan Baker, thank you as always. Christian Simmons, thank you, sir. And maybe we'll talk a bit. Maybe we can do a little collab for next year there, Christian. Get more of the East involved, right?
Yeah, if you'd like. We'll definitely, we got to chat about that for sure. But yeah, I got some time. Opening up for next year, so we'll see how things work out.
We can fill your spot, and we'll get more of the East in here. And of course, as always, Dylan, you're always very accommodating when I have to text you about what a team needs to get in, because I'm just told just contact the 519 stats guy.
Just text Dylan Baker. He's got the answer to everything.
You know what? And I'm sorry, Les, because I don't think I got back to you the other day. I think you sent me a text maybe a week ago today. And Tuesdays I have class at 8 a.m. So I'm out of the house at 6:30, and I have a weekly Tuesday nap, which I put off for this show, I will say. I have a weekly Tuesday nap, and then I woke up from my Tuesday nap, and you guys had sent, about 10 messages back and forth, and I was just like, I'm too tired. I can't handle this. And then I forgot to respond. So I apologize for that. But if you ever need any scenario, I am happy to help.
That's right. And Dylan Baker's phone number is...
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just pull that up right now. We'll put it on the screen.
He didn't respond. He didn't respond in the group chat today, so I just messaged him directly, and I said, and then all of a sudden he says, "Well, I see you responded in the group chat now."
That's it. That's it. If you need a tire changed, an oil change, Dylan Baker, text him.
Yeah,
you need
it. No.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks for having us.
GOHL playoffs coming right at you guys. It's gonna be fun.